there's a boisterous figure named Alex Jones in the news media, and there are people that have been countering him with Sandy Hook campuses involved with the state judicial branch offices, and people who have been seating juries, and people with victims advocates under the guise of being advocates for victims. There have been collusions with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and uses by a breaching method of all sides on criminal and civil cases, their sources, their family members, people next to them, all natures, the difference of that are natures of conjunction to them. The same thing with the court's names and family members and the names of their positions, the differences of it. For the original method at countries A through Z that reassigned black people as whites of eyes. And we could discern this clearer than day. People pretend it's debatable. We all know that people pretend things are debatable that are not, that we all agree about. We flabbergasted why and how, for example, black people's whites of eyes is left out from the subjects of American history, that which was entrenched before America's founders were born, northern colonies and southern colonies, and roles with it had been forced sustained. That caused negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures too, and people had to respond to that. But they blamed on every other thing except for the breaching method that had those roles forced. For them to then defend that, defending truths were used for lies exactly the way the breaching method wanted and needs. And that's what everyone's doing to everyone. Everyone's trying to fight about who's lying and telling the truth. And leaders clearer than day, they could discern locations, areas, and states are used hypercriminally for and influenced. They don't know how to speak about it that way. In other words, they're missing that part of it. But in other words, no one's telling the truth. And they want to speak about truth, have a debate about it, pretending not to realize that there are a whole bunch of things that people can't speak about, not because they're classified, because there are classified aspects tied to it. Even with peaceful energy generation, it creates context that shut people's mouths and or that open their mouths when they're not going to make the distinctions. They're going to make exceptions. They're not going to appreciate exceptions and exception nature at locations or over the worldwide web now hyper additionally, where and how they're supposed to be defended. We're not defended. We have to go to courts to defend parts of our rights and leave out the other names involved and the hyperforeign involved. For example, that which had slavery entrenched non-distinctly, northern colonies and southern colonies, not just distinctly, sickly distinctly, also sickly non-distinctly. And even though that was positive to everyone, that they shared things that they could counter, there were laws against that or voicing to do that. All exceptions, like what our founders brought, they didn't have free speech through their lifetimes. Our founders, plural, that referred to themselves, asked us to refer to themselves, plural, as James Madison, singular, and as his plan, which was limited. They were all tortured, human nature, extorted, and enslaved. You won't even let our founders be spoken about honestly, let alone our presidents. You guys won't even let the honesty about the extortion of George Washington. It would have brought up James Madison, the founders behind him and his plan. And that's also Native Americans and colonists grouped with that plan to an extent. And that plan was to force the rest of the Native Americans and the rest of the colonists together, counter-extorted and forced to help too, but only to an extent. And that's why they told us to get the Constitution unabridged. And why and how we have rights that are too numerous to have to list them relative to what they declassified about why they didn't have how they didn't have free speech too. And through our own roles with it. Otherwise, that body was sensed through our own. And no one even understood how something could be associated with those roles. And then they showed the identities of sophistication, our criminal instances, natures of sophistication. That have time collusions with the same overt criminal enterprises, private ones, terrorists, and people of A through Z. You know, nonsense, logic in nature. But know how we can discern it relative to having black pupils, whites of eyes. Because many of us have tried to communicate about how there are things associated with American history that are unnatural. They are only natural as criminal insidious nature. Nature itself shows us that some things are only natural as criminal insidiousness nature. Nature itself shows us, I'm not even a lawyer, nature itself shows us that the bar originally instilled its criminally foreign influence, tactical delusions wrought. Forgiveness is because there was a hyper foreign involved at countries A through Z. And there's, on top of its method, has other methods, but it has those plural methods employed through names A through Z of the human species body of individual bodies. Not even realizing how he used remotely self-valuing roles within that system's tactical ulterior. From syntax appreciating and following why we are shown by nature itself. There are totally different species bodies of individual bodies with their own group differences generated by that one that's generating all the different species bodies of individual bodies with all group differences. See, human differences are now through systems that tactical ulterior from its own. That's the only reason why they speak about security. And they speak about, and they make, then they want to have a debate. It's like a contest that's reliant upon criminally foreign influence, tactical delusions, wrought principles, treatments at each age and nature of campus, not PRINCIPAL, principle, PRINCIPLE, principle. It's principle that and how we have black pupils, whites of eyes. This is about principles for its use of it. Nature and science proper would have revealed. Truth proper would have revealed. There's a difference between criminal insidiousness natures of peace and of hyper peace. And science would have revealed. Earth has a special difference. There's only to the extent of it. On the extent of it, the value of it is debatable. But too, if someone tries to deny the significance of this, when how, for example, too, nature uses and appreciates a special difference the ways we know, but it's also a hyper additional ways that we are forced to ignore, even though they have relativity to, from, as, with, and for the ways we know. We are quality of fact, achieving nature forced to be self-valued and entertained, being and having been, and looking forward to being, and pretending it's practical. Criminal insidious nature of positive to negative treatments, therefore difference in treatments, therefore name treatments. Black pupils. They can't even get the colors scientifically right. They can't even get the breaching methods roles with there too. Not just nature's communications, it's the breaching methods rolls with it. That's why and how you're going to discern how names A through the, see the suits and ties, counters, exceptions, the ones with the self-valuing the uses of these terms. They're as legal terms. They're using everyone's names, but they're leaving out the people like Robert Luskin, former standing chairperson on Racketeering, Influence, and Corrupt Organizations Act. RICO said, in other words, these are statutes that have to do with predicate acts because of interstates. So we're looking at, for nature, I'm not even a lawyer, criminal insidiousness, that's interstates or international. That's used to hide the hyper foreign. Slavery was entrenched sickly, non-distinctly. Northern colonies and southern colonies, roles with it were sustained, and then America's founders were born. They communicated, they declassified, they didn't have free speech. They declassified, it wasn't about fighting about taxes while against the tea tax while there was slavery entrenched sickly, distinctly. Northern colonies, southern colonies, more than 13. Everyone was tortured, extorted, and in fact, nature enslaved, therefore physically, including our founders. You guys have to, getting when you want to debate this, you have to, your nature is important to be discerned. Imagine the nature who would try to debate this. You have to think about the thing you saw on television. There is an acting of integrity. There's an acting that counters it. That is still state collusion /S. With all natures of aggression, with all natures of calmness. Trying to communicate it too. And that comes with proofs too of behavior racketeering worse than war crimes roles. Needs and natures and styles manifest. Nature forces those styles to be. Black people see, discern the whites of eyes. And what nature communicates, replaced. And what our founders communicated about the breaching methods use of this, which nature's off reassigned communications. To reassign nature's communication. Keep pretending, everyone was criminally foreign influence and tactically delusions raw out of your schools. Where and how you make value treatments by the value of voting. You leave out the predicate acts with facts methods against ourselves. You leave out the means, in other words, you guys make the difference too. When we pay attention, there are readings of statutes and precedents that leave out and faked, and value having been faked, exception nature. On a mass scale, people involved with the World Trade Center attack, people that say they're relatives of Scalora with different last names, also as ones with the name tomorrow, involved with home break-ins in my area, with state police families interstate, and people involved with Middlesex Community College, with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and with Whiting Forensics names, with state police names, and families at the same time with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and foreign and domestic medical families, military, etc., putting fake things and databases together. Behavior racketeering worse than war crimes. Acting tied to those predicate acts with facts and databases. These are people interbranch that are switching names. This breaching method has them bringing in their kids' names in, or their kids. Mention their kids jumping in the news with the news planting WFSB fake conversations with me. The sources of and the intelligence of WTNH, also with the intelligence next to them, like the FBI, are involved with also the intelligence next to Fox Connecticut News and next to WFSB. WFSB, Connecticut's Channel 3 News, attached me to fake conversations with them and about the World Trade Center attack. And while they were forcing a principal child abuser, leader of kids, and while they were forcing collusions with on-off campuses, untimely deaths, intercities, and murders with the same roles with the same ones, and with the news, with other news articles have demonstration of the roles with rackets, with the people changing and faking, just totally faking phone transcripts, audio and video. They're replacing what's actually recorded audio and video 24/7 on campuses like Central Connecticut State University. With name UConn has all these campuses though with psychiatry, but UConn and all the campuses A through Z. UConn's a great school, but they have criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, and self-valued sequence shifts. James Madison's plan came before George Washington, and the founders behind him, plural. We were supposed to refer to them as him, singular, so these games wouldn't be played. Those that have stayed self-valued roles with the uses of our founders' words, leaving out what they declassified about it, pretending it's debatable, that they had no free speech. And sensing, as sense and sensibility, sensing for the hyperforeign. We're also this that needs the other things, others ourselves blamed, until that there were truths, like the foreign hurting each other. It's because we have been tactically ulterior from that hyperforeign body that's generating the different species bodies in our own to show us its difference. That's what we are discerning when we discern how we have the same color eyes at the same time, while we have different color eyes exceptions, and while those same color that where they're the same as the other, just like other species bodies, just non-distinctly, we have our two eyes. We have them distinctly. We have them simultaneously. But per that further, not us nor them, but all things, they have a distinct identity of simultaneous nature, the hyper simultaneous, the distinct identity of forever nature that nature shows us it's most probable. To an extent, we can discern its identity of relationship to itself, and the only increasing value that comes with that extent, too, equally increasingly valuable. Something had to generate everything. And people say God, and someone would have solved, how and why. We're supposed to be. Nature shows us it is functional, how it is a distinct identity of hyper invisible, but still discernible. This is how English was revealed to be taught. Boxing is fought, but by the rules. But the rules have stayed abridged since them ancient times. Boxing, martial arts, and wrestling are about fighting, but they are by the rules. But the rules have been abridged since them ancient times. And it all has stayed rules and sense and sensibilities. Incapable of affording to be that potential capable of being, where we could fight to who is right, the best about who's going to make the everywhere at once, everywhere the human species body has a body standing. Who's going to fix this tactically denatured trap, for example? Before America's founders were born, northern colonies and southern colonies, a torture, extortion, and factory nature slavery method, a differences racketeering worse than war crimes method, had been entrenched and had forced sustained roles. That's what our founders communicated to us to understand, is what attacked the Native Americans. All exceptions, exception nature show. Names A through the Z of the species body before Christopher Columbus even came to America, there are proofs. They already taxed. Already Earth had been tactically denatured. A breaching method it had forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded the phenomenon of names A through Z of countries that can only be operated by locations, areas, and states. To get the locations, areas, and states hurt by itself, and to get others, ourselves blamed by those A through Z. And then to defend that. And then to have those people counter that correctly. But also leaving out and changing with the breaching methods roles with it, even though nature was and is demonstrating that breaching methods roles with it. This is more probably what happened, where and how, to an extent. We have to rely upon theory with history, but we have to understand principles first. For example, black pupils. We could discern there was a predicate acts with facts method, and the difference of that, or as a nature method. There were natures of aggression, and there were natures of calmness at the courts that had worlds with witch trials, slavery, where both of those were definitions of a psychopath. Had they been allowed free speech, and including, there's a torture method that was that the corrections offices of Connecticut had and has roles with. People with the Connecticut Federal Intelligence recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed to me. There's a Lance Cuddy. I never saw him inside of a school in my life. He's involved with the FBI, people with WTNH too, at corners of streets and on and off campuses with their stories. with proven sex offenders, leaders of kids. And there's a woman named Sullivan involved with stories in the syntax of Fox Connecticut News. Fox Connecticut News has a bunch of intelligence next to them that are involved with all sides of criminal and civil cases, interstates, that are and with international bodies, but also per hyper foreign, that also had roles with the World Trade Center attack, that are also increasing. So you have little clowns playing games and making conspiracy theories. There are people involved with Sandy Hook, with medical campuses, putting fake transcripts in databases, fake conversations with people, having their kids even on changing and faking what's digitally recorded. Facebook has scams with people at Sandy Hook too, personally and professionally, and with the Facebook page of New Britain Superior Court, Harper Courts, and a principal sex offenders campus Facebook page. Involved also with hate groups involved, also with identity theft, fraud, slams, and wire crimes with the same house/S, involved a whole bunch of ways, with police that pretended fake conversations of me being at the police station when I was a kid, and then I was an adult. And when I was arrested, went there, I had no conversations at all with them. So the kids that they did force to go down there when they wanted me to go down, I didn't go down there. My parents told them we're not going down. In other words, the reason they wanted to go down there is make it look like I knew Chris Walters before I did. And when I was in the car with my conversation with him, they're putting fake ties and fake natures of ties to me with people next to Harper Hospital in Harper, Connecticut, with people next to campuses, intercities, not just legitimate intelligence in unmarked police forms, and training them. And voices with the courts. The New Britain Superior Court has victims advocates involved with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, child sex offenders, leaders of kids years apart, and further all kinds of, like Mendez police. There are people with the name Mendez too. I don't know all their names, and families. They have roles with names next to campuses. Involved further too with New Britain Superior Court, with some sexual and medical offenders of kids. Also with the FBI Director Robert Lusk and his co-defendants, their family members, involved with overt criminal enterprises and private ones on campuses, a whole bunch of other countries. These are not legitimately people with the foreign and domestic militaries shared here and there, like with Russians at Ukraine, people from Korea, people from other countries in the news. They're on the campuses involved with the same house/S near me. Involved also time collusion/S with with federal evidences crimes, and with criminally foreign with the interbranch switching and forging names and their families involved. At the same time, with criminal enterprises names next to body dumping spots. They're lying. They're using the right to lie, but they don't have the right to lie. We're showing they need to hide the readings of statutes and precedents that are criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw, including with their lawyers consciously, offensively, and with the news media, their YouTube pages, the YouTube pages of Wethersfield Government Access Television is further involved with Russians, American, Ukraine at the same time. Collusions with Harper Hospital and medical offenders of kids. A Leahy family putting fake transcripts, refusing to get on paper with the confessions of the principal upskirt nature. There's a Michael Emmett also involved with people intercities and other campuses through time. Further, and still they're playing games with the communication, with the databases, and medical too, with offenders of kids, sexual and legal at the same time, as one's personally involved with the prosecutors, judges, and victims advocates, and names on all sides of relative religious spots and religious nutbags as they're actually recorded. But you guys are pretending things are debatable. They're not, because you also have overt criminal enterprises, private one. You have terrorists now too. These Mendez police have federal evidence as crimes with WFSB, with Connecticut's Channel 3 News, and with Saudis involved also with there's the reported sexual relationship between cousins named Scalora and DeMoro. That is one of the things. And there's people with the name O'Neill involved with Whiting Forensics, also with wire crimes with the replacing and faking digital evidences in wire crimes, and with the police departments, plural, throughout the cities of Connecticut, inter and intra cities, and these are people with the intelligence next to the Capitol in Hartford, Connecticut. See, our militaries, our names of our people, of our sciences, the branches of government, the difference of that and the intelligence was never not criminally foreign, tactical illusions raw. They would have brought up how the suburbs from America to Russia to Ukraine, the colonists understood how they were designed for torture, extortion, factory major slavery. The only means to cause positive value, nature, progression, acts, and natures is the self-value rules of the breaching methods, employments of criminal and seditious natures of positives. Means to cause positive value, nature, progressive acts, and nature. The only means. More and more criminal and seditious natures of them, as collusions with the criminal and seditious natures of negative value, nature, progressions, acts, and natures. To keep the discernment, the breaching methods rolls with that, blamed on every other things other than themselves, and there's means to do that because everyone's those forced roles. And then as everyone's hurting each other, then self-value roles, forced self-value. That is used remotely, black pupils. Peer. Forgiveness is not to give up. Forgiveness is not to change and fake what people say. Hear many pray. They have not been legitimately making all sides of cases. The kids who went to my campuses will confess, demonstrate, confirm that sometimes it's themselves as a family, as themselves as kids or as adults. Sometimes it's the overt criminal enterprise, that are the ones criminally foreign influenced. Sometimes it's the people that influence people, the time where people are going to be and say things to them. And they also just fake that because they need people to blame anything other themselves rather than the foreign names, because there's also hyper foreign in there. And they can't make legitimate uses of foreign names of that. So they want to be, look, how do you know? Do you know about these details? Get the Constitution unabridged. The nature of debate contains quality aspects of nature that are criminally foreign influence, tactical delusions raw, reliant upon self-value, criminal and seditious natures of positive and negative treatment simultaneously being and having been used to force, trick, hurt, and persuade other things other than themselves. Blame for things that America's founders communicated for us to blame on the human factory nature breaching method that had entrenched roles, replacing what nature communicates with black people's whites of eyes. 10. Okay, in other words, so I shouldn't have to keep begging for them to get on paper. They have the state capitol. I don't know that I know non-verbally he sought me out to demonstrate it was true. Classmates and teachers associated with a Chick Casper, also people at Hartford Hospital involved on my street. I never saw Chick Casper on my street. I don't even know where he lives. He's been involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, fake ties, fake natures of ties to me, with people all along with Route 3 and conjunctions to it and conjunctions to that, in the Burlington Turnpike before the heart of Hartford. But his father was also one of the coaches, and they have the different sports teams and the different names of the people of the sciences. They have their sense and sensibilities played as victims / hyper victims. Per uses of them only capable of blaming other things other than themselves, or ignoring things. That's why I haven't been responded to. These are also people that pretended they knew me behind my back, had collusions with people that put fake things, then they have communications with your parents. These are people that have kids sometimes go down to the office, and they're not even in trouble. They and then I don't even know that person. And they go, and we're not in trouble. But they keep doing that, and they're putting things in there, and they're planting people in classes, and making people look like they know others that they were never even in classes with ones that are in classes we never even spoke. All examples that they use criminally foreign influence, tactical delusions wrong, increasingly Weathersfield Mayors and mayors throughout Connecticut tied to them have roles on off the state judicial branch offices, all the state corrections offices, with all natures of crime scenes, and names next to them, where and how they have those overt collusions with names next. Like there's a Andrew O'Brien and a Timothy O'Brien. There's an O'Brien family that years ago, and through the years, more and more people sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm that places and names next to the state judicial branch offices have roles with them putting predicate acts with facts and identity theft, fraud, slander, federal evidence crimes. They have roles with the intelligence community, foreign and domestic, at and next to news locations like WFSB, as one in Rocky Hill, and Fox Connecticut News in Harper, Connecticut, is also on off the state judicial branch offices involved with wire crimes and digital crimes, with child offenders, and Sandy Hook prisons has crimes with their patients and criminals and criminals before they were in their prison. They have roles of the crime scenes and the names next to them, like next to a principal. Next to a principal's child abuser's campus. The news also was planting evidences with people that live near corners of streets, and they were planting that corner of the street has something to do with their roles with Russians and Weathersfield police confessions, and they're forging and switching names, and people on my street involved with falsified police reports with them. Since I was a kid, they won't put a police report in writing because they've been putting fake things in databases and building on that too. As collusion / as increasingly timed with a whole bunch of other countries, overt criminal enterprises and private ones. And all this is very, not only is this recorded, but there are means recorded to discern where and how they're putting fake recording and change recorded reality. So, and Emily or Amy and Eric Burgess recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed the Britain Superior Court's families and intimate ties, and Harper Court's families and intimate ties, including with the FBI former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, his co-dependents and their family members. They have been planting evidences intercities between and predicate acts with methods roles and fake motivations roles with the leaders of the kids and their families still, and the people next to the campuses, the same. In other words, Harper courts and the Britain Superior Court, I found also Connecticut District Court families associated with them and their kids, time collusions with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, identity theft, fraud, slander, pretending passions and emotions. There's also, they use truths too. They want to control the nature of the debate on things. They already were shown to themselves. They had the criminally foreign influence uses of words like control as their roles with all kinds of natures of crime scenes and methods and behavior racketeering worse than war crimes. They're preventing people from calmly or any other way. They try the whole array too, and they're lying about what people learn from that. They leak with that too. See, the breaching method made people leak distinctly from any other sort of influences or foreign influences for people to leak things. The breaching method, that's hyperforeign, that's A through Z, I don't understand it. That's how wide they speak about economies, and they leave out and change what our founders communicated about how human fact tree nature breaching method had forced the economy talk as locations, areas, and states that are incapable of speaking about that, the Constitution unabridged, because they came through they were child abused. They came through criminally foreign influence tactical illusions through our campuses. All exceptions, the exception nature too, show even the differences of the best campus and the worst campus originally, and still the breaching method measures and maintains its use / estimate and self-value rules. Quality fact sheet nature, we have means to address these things, especially with live video. In other words, just with YouTube, we can change the world, not just change the world. We can get the world led again by that which is only increasing identity of value / value progression that will only stay further positive onto itself, where it is already automatically relativity to positive and negative equally, like all identity. But in other words, with this Earth's a special difference. Otherwise, our difference is forced from here. Even if we all agree to stay systems tactile in the hypernative way and one, boxing is fun. Better than we all agree we want better than free, and we have it better than free. Even fun, we can make it to fix the tactically denatured ground before our feet and its hyper-additional relativity and roles with water and its nature and its resources. We have to appreciate that which is inherent to, active to, and progressive to our quality aspects and nature aspects of nature, Black people. So Connecticut, there are only 3 branches of government, and they're obligated now. I caught them. They want forgiveness. Well, that's why they're forgiveness. We have to keep the blame on. We have to show their guilt, though. It's already recorded. The breaching method knows that. They're screening a breaching method when they try to defend themselves. In other words, and by hiding and plotting. Get me off the fake conversations with Channel 3 News. Conversations, plural, with themselves and with others. That's a whole bunch of different natures of organized crimes. And confessions and demonstrations while pretending other, because they're involved with extortion, torture, in fact, human nature, slavery, therefore physically. Black people, these are involved with predators, intercities next to the campuses. People on off the judicial branch offices involved with next to the campuses in Hartford, Connecticut, with the names next to the judicial branch office in conjunction to it. Sick, fake sciences spoke for Hartford, Connecticut, a suburban/urban, designed to unfold that way by the breaching method for 3-family homes to be converted to 2-family. I mean, for big homes to be converted to 2-family, 3-family, and real close to each other. Then knock down and build a little building, miniature New York made, straight, urban, clearer than day. Criminally foreign influence, tactical illusions, raw sciences, names of the people the sciences spoke for New York City. Clearer than day, more games we could have stacked to turn more negatives into more hyper positives and make positives out of it. And where we mess up and make a criminal cease nature positive out of negative, we'll sense it and make it and adapt better, make better hyper positives out of negatives. Black people, it's not about voting, it's about treatment of principles. To have that, we have to have free speech. To have that, we have to have exceptions and exception nature treated properly. You guys can't afford to have that done because you came through campuses that had criminally foreign influence, tactical delusions, or principle treatments. And when we forgave them because we understood everyone had this. But see, what they're doing is putting fake ties and fake natures of ties between ourselves. The people that went to the campuses I went to will tell you this. They're putting fake ties, fake natures of ties between people that don't even know each other. Larry Martin will tell you this. He only walked by me real quick one time. I don't know Larry Martin on the campus in my life. In other words, and for example, his roles with a Joe DeMauro, confessions, and my campus's confessions regarding Joe DeMauro. As kids and adults increasingly tied to body dumping spots, overt criminal enterprises, private ones. And at the same time, collusions with child abusers, leaders of kids, including sexual and medical, and with and as people with the businesses and houses next to the campuses and next to Hartford Hospital, with people that fake transcripts with me through the mail to other people. I can't even get them to communicate with me. Get Hartford Hospital too onto paper. And Judge Napolitano, please get them on paper with this Leahy family fake conversation with me. And with this Judge Killian, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw, involved with rape threats, people with the New Britain Superior Court too, and other courts, and people with the state judicial branch office involved with more sexual medical offenders with this Judge Killian and doctors associated with him. But the Leahy family was the first of 3 times. 2 times they totally made things up to force me to Hartford Hospital to cover what I caught them doing the first time when I forced people to call them to the police. In other words, I still can't get a response till no one will communicate with me. They already put me in fake transcripts. Get them on paper. Let's go. There are more people involved with them with threats on my street from areas away with violence and guns. And their patients and criminals, including those are security. They just faked what's said. And they put me in fake communications with my family members. They've been doing this in fake ties to them since I was a kid, too, including at the religious spots. Right and wait, in other words, get them on paper. You guys are gonna have problems. It's gonna be worse. Get them on paper. I didn't want that's the law. That's mandated law. Who says other? Tell me the name of who disbelieves. And what's they get? Where is he now? This police chief Cintron, retired police chief Cintron. He's one of the ones who recorded, expressed, demonstrated, confirmed involved also with a Mazzucato family and with corners of streets associated with them through time, involved with some sexual and medical offenders of kids, foreign and domestic. Let's get them on paper and make sure they don't pretend they know me. By the way, they take exception, you go by there. Identity theft, fraud, slanders. Let's get them on paper, one name in sequence. And this John Mayano, too. Let's get this John Mayano made confessions here, told me different things. He's involved with investigators with the DeMoro family, intercities, all along Elm Streets in Rocky Hill and Weathersfield, with a whole bunch of people would see on my street involved with him with that. I never knew them until after John Mayano, and I never saw him around Rick Sanfaglione. Rick Sanfaglione also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. I saw him one time with John Mayano, a couple times. Not really, in other words. And that was after they graduated, though. My neighbor and Rick Sanfaglione, who was in my class. They made me stay back by two speech class teachers. I never had a personal conversation with either of them. The content of my speech, they're hiding what was actually what they thought about it, because they have roles recorded with Washington, D.C. and World Trade Center attack roles, and names on all sides of criminal and civil cases and depositions involved with a Chris Walters and a Mike Panadol, with two speech class teachers I had, involved with drugs and medicines crimes, identity theft, fraud, slanders, also with the judicial branch offices and corrections offices, and some police families that used to live near me, increasingly involved with wire crimes, mail crimes, as police forms, involved with home break-ins, and people involved with that. Yeah. Get them on paper, one name in sequence, please. Get Judge Napolitano. The police are recorded threatening me, in other words, demonstrating to me. You can't call them because they'll just fake. They already faked phone transcripts. They already changed other phone transcripts. And you can't go down there because they already faked conversations with me there when I was a kid. And now as an adult too. And so you can't go there and speak with them because they already put fake things in context. We already know they are criminally vulnerable to tax illusions wrong. Now you guys are pretending other. That's why you have to get them on paper, because you have people that have roles with the names with the violence intercities too. They have roles with confessions intercities, so it extends to the confessions of the other people too, and it shows confession. It shows connections between the people. There are communications are distinct from what is said. There are communications racketeering roles, worse than war crimes, black pupils here simultaneously. There are many things at once. So we're going to keep it simple. Because they've tried to search people's words for things they can fake and lie, they'll use truth for lies. They're preventing our short words. Get me off the fake conversation with WFSB. No, it was also about the World Trade Center attack. And I was in the court next to the World Trade Center right before the World Trade Center attack. They also changed what my family said about that to them. The news, when they asked questions to my family. These are people that lied to my family since I was a kid, and with houses in my area, involved with people intercampuses with identity theft, fraud, slanders with their extended family members too, and foreign medical, domestic. These are not legitimate roles of military. Judge Napolitano. In other words, please get them on paper, one name in sequence. The Weathersfield Police. They have tomorrow's and one with also made confessions tied to these ones with the name Mendez. Like there's an older. I never had a word of conversation with him or any other police officer at the Weathersfield Police Station when I went down there, and he pretended on a police report that I had a conversation with him. I said one sentence to my friend from Saudi Arabia, who's also increasingly tied to, I didn't even know about it until then. Eric Mendez, I knew other ways, but now I know that Eric Mendez is one of the ones with intelligence community intercities, but these are also people with interstates and international. They have roles of programs like DACA and stuff like that, where not one voice originally still could be able to speak for criminal foreign influences properly, because they're still criminally foreign influence, tactical illusions raw, fact, human nature, quality aspects of nature. For example, replacing and having replaced what our founders communicate to us, to communicate about Black people's rights of life, about why they did not have free speech, and about how and why the other founders and presidents they had to counter extort and citizens and Native Americans, the rest of the Native Americans. Everyone's forced to counter the slavery, torture, extortion method. But we can't do it if we're blaming other things on ourselves. Even when correct, even if we're doing it correctly, we can't, if we're doing it, leaving out the breaching method, we're doing it incorrectly. If we leave out that which had slavery non-distinctly, northern counties and southern counties, and playing the game with, oh, it was this group and blah, blah. In other words, I'll say what it's about. I'll tell you what it's about. It's fact, you predicate with facts, criminal and citizen's nature, delivery system method. Who disbelieves will have inherent to, active to, and progressive to increasingly. Their logic, their nature of logic, demonstration of the same things. Black pupils, the hyper-evidential, nears. Romulus and Remus is more probably having been about this science. Now, Republic heals when we play games. I'll animate the Romulus vaccine. I don't know. Okay. Hey.